Ultimate Gohan versus Janemba is one of those matchups that sounds obvious until you actually slow down and compare what each character can do. On one side, you have Gohan at his absolute peak in Z. No transformations, stamina drain, just raw unlocked potential. On the other, Janemba, a reality warping anomaly who bends space, ignores conventional damage, and forces even fusion to be considered. So the real question isn't who hits harder, it's whether raw power is enough to deal with someone who doesn't fight by normal rules. If you enjoy conversations like this and want to take part in deeper Dragon Ball discussions, I highly encourage you to join the Dragon Ball HQ Discord server. The link is below in the description. We'll be diving into this topic and more over there. If you'd like to support the channel or even help choose the next battle, consider becoming a channel member today. You can even join the flock for just 99 cents a month. Now, without further delay, let's begin. When the Buu Saga opens, Gohan is no longer the terrifying force that ended Cell's reign. Peace didn't just give Earth time to recover, it fundamentally changed him. After years of non-stop crisis, Gohan finally got what he always wanted, a normal life. School, research, and quiet days replaced gravity rooms and life-or-death battles. And while the choice makes perfect sense for his character, Dragon Ball's universe doesn't reward complacency. By the time the World's Martial Arts Tournament rolls around, Gohan hasn't vanished entirely. He's just rusted. He operates under the goofy Great Saiyan Man persona, more concerned with hiding his identity than testing his overall limits. Even when he taps back into the Super Saiyan 2 transformation, it feels hollow. The form exists, but the intensity is gone. Vegeta notices this immediately. Where Cell once trembled, Gohan now struggles to project the same dominance. Years without serious combat have taken their toll, and Vegeta doesn't sugarcoat it. Gohan has lost his rage and become weaker. That reality becomes impossible to ignore during Gohan's clash with Dabura. On paper, this fight should have been one-sided. Dabura's strength is repeatedly compared to Perfect Cell, a foe Gohan annihilated years ago once he ascended to Super Saiyan 2. Yet instead of overwhelming Dabura, Gohan finds himself locked in a stalemate. The battle drags on and neither side is gaining decisive ground. And Vegeta's irritation turns to outright disgust. This isn't the warrior who once stood above gods and monsters, this is the wasted potential in motion. Meanwhile, the gap between Gohan and the pure-blooded Saiyans only continues to widen. Goku, despite being dead, has somehow climbed even higher, unlocking Super Saiyan 3 through relentless training in the afterlife. Vegeta, though lacking this form at the stage, is still honed, disciplined, and dangerous. Compared to them, Gohan was stagnated. Even Goku quietly accepts this, shifting his long-term hopes away from his eldest son and towards Goten and Trunks, the next generation that still lives and breathes battle. Then Majin Buu enters the picture, and all illusions shatter. Dabura, who had given Gohan so much trouble, is effortlessly erased. Vegeta's desperate self-destruction fails to stop the monster, and Gohan himself is completely outclassed. Whatever strength he once had simply isn't enough anymore. With Earth on the brink and no immediate solution in sight, Gohan is removed from the battlefield entirely, sent to the sacred world of the Kais, where his story takes a radical turn. Instead of training or transformations, Elder Kai offers something unprecedented: total liberation of Gohan's dormant power. No rage triggers, no Super Saiyan stages, just raw, unrestricted potential. The ritual is slow, awkward, and anything but glamorous, but when it ends, the result is undeniable. Gohan returns changed. There's no flashy aura, no lightning crackling around him, yet the pressure he exerts is overwhelming. This isn't a new form, it's Gohan as he was always meant to be. Elder Kai calls it his ultimate state, power drawn directly from his latent reserves, no longer bottlenecked by transformation mechanics. When Ultimate Gohan confronts Super Buu, the power gap is immediately apparent. This isn't a struggle, it's a dismantling. Buu, who had crushed everyone else with ease, is forced into retreat. Even Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, despite fusion, time chamber training, and reckless aggression, never imposed control like this. Gohan, however, does it effortlessly, calmly, and without gimmicks. At this moment, the hierarchy is crystal clear. Ultimate Gohan stands above every non-fused warrior in the arc, and Goku had openly admitted he couldn't defeat Super Buu, yet Gohan dominates him outright. Vegeta doesn't even factor into the equation. Goten and Trunks can only watch in disbelief, realizing that their older brother had surpassed them in a way they never anticipated. In the end, the Buu Saga doesn't just restore Gohan, it redefines him. He doesn't reclaim his Cell game strength, he exceeds it. By abandoning transformations and embracing his full potential, Gohan receives a ceiling that no Saiyan had touched before, completing his journey from reluctant fighter to fallen prodigy, then to the strongest warrior alive. While the main cast is distracted enjoying themselves in Otherworld, absolute chaos breaks loose at the check-in station. A careless ogre lets his guard down, allowing a rogue demon to tamper with the soul-cleansing machine, an artifact that had been stockpiling the corrupted energy of countless evil spirits, and the result is catastrophic. The accumulated malice doesn't just overload the system, it consumes the demon entirely, mutating him into the monstrous entity known as Fat Janemba. Almost immediately, Janemba asserts control. King Yama is sealed away with zero resistance, and the structure of the Otherworld destabilizes. The barrier separating the dead from the living collapses. Souls begin pouring back into the mortal realm unchecked. With the situation spiraling out of control, Goku and Pikkon are dispatched to investigate. They don't get far before encountering Janemba, and the power gap is made clear instantly. Janemba casually flicks Pikkon aside as if he weighs nothing, an act that requires no effort, no charge up, and no acknowledgement, just raw superiority. When Janemba flares his energy, even Goku is visibly shaken, openly admitting that he's never felt ki on this level before. Goku decides to confront Janemba directly in hell, while Pikkon breaks off to rescue King Yama. This moment is often overlooked, but it potentially applies a ridiculous speed feat. Traversing from the check-in station to hell isn't just crossing distance, it's moving across realms. Otherworld is vast enough to contain heaven, which has been stated multiple times to rival the size of the living universe itself. Depending on the interpretation, Goku and Pikkon may have crossed a universal or even infinite distance nearly instantaneously. Now, to be fair, it's possible they were already near the dimensional threshold separating hell from the check-in station, so the exact scale is debatable, but the implication is still extreme. Once alone with Janemba, Goku quickly realizes that brute force isn't enough. Janemba effortlessly batters him around, not just due to raw strength, but because he can anticipate Goku's movements before they happen. This pre-connection combat advantage makes standard fighting tactics useless. Still, Goku adapts, briefly turning Janemba's own reality warping against him, but even that isn't enough. Goku escalates to Super Saiyan 2, but the gap remains. He's forced to push further, and this is where things get absurd. When Goku powers up beyond Super Saiyan 2, the sheer violence of his ki doesn't stay confined to hell. His energy ripples outward, crossing realms entirely, reaching Grand Kai's planet and causing it to visibly shake. How insane this feat is depends heavily on how you interpret Dragon Ball's cosmology. Heaven alone is stated to be comparable in size to the living universe. Grand Kai's planet exists beyond that, and the guidebooks depict it as disproportionately massive compared to standard celestial bodies. On top of that, Grand Kai's mansion contains an internal pocket dimension filled with endless stars. The Toei official site even suggests that the otherworld space inside the mansion may itself be universal in scale. Then it gets worse. Multiple guidebooks, including Daizenshuu 4 for example, explicitly describe the living universe as infinite, not figuratively, literally. It refers to an endless expanse of darkness, an infinitely expanding cosmos overseen by the Kaioshin. Galaxies exist without limit in every quadrant. Nebula contain uncountable stars, and those nebula themselves repeat endlessly. Daizenshuu 7 and Chozenshuu 4 reinforce this, reiterating that the galaxies exist infinitely throughout the universe. Even the demon realm is suggested to mirror the structure, implying it too may be infinite. And there's even bigger implication. Otherworld appears to transcend the living world entirely. Goku himself, along with guidebook statements, indicate that the otherworld has no conventional flow of time. If time doesn't exist or exists differently, you're no longer dealing with a standard 4D structure. At minimum, this suggests a higher dimensional framework, which means Goku's power-up didn't just shake a universe and may have disturbed an infinite higher dimensional realm simply by existing. After this, Goku transforms into Super Saiyan 3 and absolutely overwhelms Fat Janemba. The fight becomes one-sided and Janemba can't keep up, land any meaningful hits, and is completely outclassed. But it doesn't last very long. Janemba regenerates into Super Janemba, a vastly more refined and dangerous form. While Goku can initially injure him, the battle quickly turns against him due to Janemba's overwhelming hacks. Super Janemba begins manipulating space itself, trapping Goku using techniques that appear to originate from dimensions separate from even hell. Goku is pushed to the brink of death, and in these moments, Vegeta arrives just in time to intervene. But it changes nothing. He's annihilated almost immediately, barely slowing Janemba down. With no other options, the Saiyans attempt fusion and fail, resulting in Beku. Ironically, however, this failure works in their favor. Janemba's predictive abilities completely break down Beku's erratic, nonsensical movements. He can't read him, he can't anticipate him, and he can't adapt. Eventually though, the fusion wears off, but buys them enough time for a second attempt. Meanwhile, Pikkon undercovers Janemba's critical weakness. Verbal insults destabilize his body. Mockery doesn't just provoke him, it literally fractures his form and shatters his barriers. Using this knowledge, Pikkon jumps back into the fight, distracting Janemba long enough for Goku and Vegeta to successfully fuse once more, and this time they don't fail. As Gogeta, they're able to easily dismantle Janemba, and that's the end of that. Now, if you decide to factor in anime-based scaling, Janemba's ceiling rises pretty dramatically. Under that lens, he can reasonably be compared to Buu Saga top tiers, specifically Gohan, a character whose power was explicitly portrayed as destabilizing the entire living universe. Both guidebook material and Vegeta himself sport the idea that Buhan's ki alone was threatening universal annihilation, the living world to be specific, something Vegeta had to actively counter just to prevent collapse. If Janemba operates on the same tier, his high-end interpretation stops looking like a wanking and starts looking internally consistent. That said, even if you exclude Buhan's scaling entirely, Janemba still holds up. His feats and narrative placement already put him in absurd territory without leaning on cross-art comparisons. The cosmology implications, fusion requirement, and Hack's heavy combat profile make it very hard to downplay him meaningfully. The most common pushback to all of this doesn't come from feats either, it comes directly from Koyama. At one point, Toei Animation's own website explicitly labeled Janemba as the strongest movie villain. The statement existed even though Hirudegarn appears later in the movie lineup, which alone dismantles the lazy assumption that every new movie antagonist must automatically surpass the previous one. Interestingly, the statement was later removed, and the reason was not because Janemba was debunked necessarily, but Koyama, who even as late as 2023 consistently argues that Broly is the strongest movie villain, a stance he's reiterated in guide-related material and later on Twitter. The removal reflects author preference and not a revision of Janemba's on-screen portrayal, though I do still believe that Broly would beat Janemba. That's a different story. Even so, that original Toei statement still has scaling implications. If Janemba was once officially considered above Hirudegarn, that actually lines up perfectly with what we see. Janemba required fusion to defeat and consistently overwhelm a Super Saiyan 3 level Goku with reality warping abilities. Hirudegarn, by contrast, ultimately falls to Dragon Fist, a technique used by Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Strong, yes, but clearly not fusion tier. The gap becomes even clearer when you look at Gohan's role. Gohan is present in the Hirudegarn film and is shown to be outright inferior to Hirudegarn in combat. If Janemba scales above Hirudegarn, and all evidence suggests he does, then by transitive scaling, Gohan would sit far below Janemba. This isn't even a close matchup. Between raw power, dimensional hacks, and combat dominance, Janemba completely outclasses him. Statements, feats, and narrative hierarchy all point in the same direction. Janemba is above Hirudegarn, who's above movie Gohan by a significant margin. So unless Gohan somehow wins through verbal warfare, pulling out the same unhinged trash talk he used on Super Buu, you know the one I'm talking about, there's no realistic path to victory here. Jokes aside, the scaling holds. Janemba being placed at or near the top of the movie villain hierarchy isn't an outlier, and it's exactly what the evidence supports, making this matchup not even close and pretty much a slam in Janemba's favor.